I screamed. When I opened the freezer at -4 degrees Fahrenheit, there was my 6-month-old daughter, whom I had entrusted to my husband. I hurriedly picked her up, placing my hand on her cheek. Her face was cold, and I couldn't hear her crying. At that moment, I collapsed right there. Why has it come to this? I contacted my husband, and he nonchalantly claimed that our daughter was still doing well. Liar. I decided to investigate the man who had deceived me and subjected our child to such a fate. What I discovered was beyond belief. Filled with rage, my resolve was clear: I would bring hell upon my husband. My name is Olivia. I met my husband Michael, who is 5 years older than me, in the roles of a restaurant's owner and a customer. The restaurant near the publishing house where I work was a frequent gathering spot for my colleagues and me. Michael was always busy working in the restaurant, and I found myself admiring his hard work. Fate brought us together, and our relationship blossomed. We got married when I was 34, starting our new life together in the upstairs residence of the restaurant. Shortly after moving in, I discovered I was pregnant. Michael's joyful reaction was priceless.
Is it true? Olivia, you did it! I'm finally going to be a dad.
Throughout the pregnancy, we eagerly awaited the day we would meet our child, sharing ultrasound photos from each checkup. After working almost until the last moment, I gave birth to our daughter, Mia. Despite the challenges of first-time parenting, our life together, with a loving husband and an adorable child, was pure happiness. Since our child was born, Michael has become busier with work, and I've taken care of most of the household chores and childcare during my maternity leave. While I understood that it couldn't be helped, I worried about his well-being. "Aren't you getting enough sleep?" I asked. His response:
Well, I'm managing somehow.
Our home was on the first floor of the restaurant, so at least he didn't have a commute. However, during this time, there were plans for a new shop, and he would leave every day for meetings, returning late at night. Additionally, he visited other restaurants with employees to develop new menu items after closing his own shop. Mornings were a rush, as he'd sleep until the last minute before preparations began. Unfortunately, this busy schedule left him with very little time for Mia. "Hey, would you accompany me tomorrow on your day off to buy some children's clothes?"
No way. I'm tired. Can't you let me sleep on the day the shop is closed?
My husband's fatigue from work seems to have affected his mood. When our daughter wakes up in the middle of the night and fusses, he yells,
Enough! Make her stop crying.
Not only that, but in his frustration, he throws nearby objects at us. I tried to reason with him, saying, "Mia is still a baby. It can't be helped." But he wouldn't listen. Finally, he snapped.
Enough already. I'm going to sleep at the shop.
With those words, he stormed out of the house. I keep telling myself that once things settle down with the new shop, maybe Michael's feelings will change. However, as our daughter reaches 3 months old, nothing seems to have improved. At that time, I received a message from my best friend. She was getting married at a resort location within the United States in 3 months, and she wanted me to attend. Although I explained that it might be difficult, she insisted and even asked me to give a speech. Leaving Mia with Michael would be impossible, I thought. My parents lived far away, and it would be a hassle for them to come. Meanwhile, Michael's elderly parents lived nearby, but I hesitated to ask them to take care of our baby. I'd love to see the bride and celebrate, but I sighed as I looked at the invitation. Just then, my husband approached, glancing at what was in my hands.
A friend's wedding?
He asked.
Yeah.
I replied. It's in 3 months, but with Mia, I'm considering declining.
He
said, returning his gaze to his phone. However, a few minutes later, my husband approached me again.
Go ahead and attend.
I was taken aback. What do you mean? I asked. He replied.
The wedding. Since I'll take a break from the shop and take care of Mia, you should go.
His unexpected suggestion left me speechless, and I couldn't respond immediately. Are you sure? Even though it's a resort location within the US, it's quite far, and if something happens, I won't be able to return quickly because of the flight. I expressed my concerns. But he reassured me.
It's okay. Take a break once in a while.
Thank you. I had honest concerns about my husband, who hadn't been involved in taking care of our daughter much since she was born, being able to handle it alone for several days. However, I didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm, so I swallowed my words and asked him to do it. Over the next 3 months, I carefully taught Michael how to take care of Mia, considering his schedule. And on the day I departed for my friend's wedding, take care.
Yeah. Leave it to me. Have a great time.
I entrusted our daughter to him and left home as planned. However, upon arriving at the airport, an announcement informed me that the flight was cancelled due to sudden bad weather. I contacted my friend to apologize for the last-minute cancellation. As I tried to call Michael to explain, there was no answer. Is he struggling with taking care of Mia? I wondered. Imagining that scene made me feel somewhat amused. I decided not to bother sending an email, assuming he wouldn't have time to read it, and returned home. When I arrived home, drenched in the sideways rain, neither my husband nor our daughter was in the living room or bedroom. Yet, considering the stormy weather, it seemed unlikely they had gone out. Since it was the shop's scheduled day off, I ventured downstairs just to be sure. The atmosphere there was eerily quiet, and I couldn't sense anyone's presence. However, the light in the pantry, where he kept the freezer and other supplies, was on. Did someone forget to turn it off? I wondered. As I stepped into the room, I noticed that the freezer door was slightly ajar, allowing cold air to escape. Concerned about the perishable items inside, I decided to check. When I opened the door, I screamed. I was met with a chilling sight. Our 6-month-old daughter, Mia, placed in a basket and stored in the freezer at a bone-chilling -4 degrees Fahrenheit. I immediately pulled her out and held her close. Mia, stay with me. Her face was icy, and she made no sound. Despair washed over me as I cradled her. But I knew I had to act quickly. I called an ambulance, and as they rushed Mia to the emergency room, I silently prayed for her safety. Why did this happen? Where on earth is Michael? I called my husband repeatedly, but each time, it went straight to voicemail without connecting. Frustrated, I decided to test the waters by sending him an email, intentionally asking about our daughter's well-being. To my surprise, I received a message saying, Mia is happily playing. Enjoy the wedding. Yet, at that very moment, our daughter was still receiving medical treatment behind that door. Liar. The rage I felt toward Michael was boiling inside me. It was then that I resolved to seek thorough revenge against him and took action. 3 days later, my husband returned home. Instead of heading for our house, he went straight to the shop. I watched his actions through the baby monitor camera I had installed in the shop from our upstairs residence. Without hesitation, he walked toward the room where the freezer was located. Through the camera, he seemed somewhat frantic.
Whoa!
His scream echoed all the way to the second floor. I quietly followed him downstairs and stood behind him. He muttered something, almost like a chant. "Why are you shouting so loudly? I can hear you all the way upstairs." Startled, he turned around when he noticed my presence.
Huh? Why?
He stammered. Mia would be frightened. Was she behaving well? I asked, noticing our daughter's clothes behind him. As I leaned in to see Mia's face, Michael used his entire body to block me. "I want to hold her quickly, so could you move aside?" He stammered.
No, she's sleeping now, it's better to leave her alone.
But I couldn't wait. Even just her sleeping face. "Ah!" I screamed, and Michael awkwardly averted his eyes. "What's going on? Where's Mia?" I demanded. He hesitated.
Well, you see.
It was no wonder. The basket in the freezer should have contained our daughter, but instead, there was a baby doll dressed in Mia's clothes. Of course, it was all my doing, a carefully orchestrated performance. Please bear with this exchange a little longer.
This was just her plaything.
Really? So where's Mia?
She's being looked after. Yes. She's temporarily with someone else.
Michael piled on the lies, desperately trying to salvage the situation. Then he looked at me, realization dawning on his face.
Why are you here? Wasn't your return scheduled for the evening?
If I return home early, would it cause any problems?
No, it's not like that.
In reality, when I decided to take revenge on Michael, I had sent him an email. It stated that I would continue entrusting our daughter to him and that I would return home 3 days later in the evening. That email was a lie. On that day, the flight was cancelled due to bad weather, so I couldn't go. That's why I immediately returned home.
Huh? I didn't hear anything about that. Why didn't you contact me sooner?
But it wasn't you who didn't answer.
Even so. I also miss calls sometimes.
Michael, who had been assertive until then, grew increasingly timid, and toward the end, he mumbled so softly that I could barely hear him. However, whether he answered the phone at that moment no longer mattered. My anger wasn't about such trivial matters. Claiming that you left Mia with someone else was a lie, right? After all, when I returned home, you weren't here, and our daughter was in the freezer.
Did you know? And yet, you even used such a doll to play a disgusting prank.
Michael retorted, growing defensive as he approached me. But I stood my ground. Who's the real lowest of the low? When I asked you about Mia's well-being in that email, you said she was happily playing. Michael's face twisted in frustration. And yet, at that moment, she was already at the hospital. You liar. What were you doing? Tears welled up as I confronted him. But he avoided eye contact, turning away in silence. Say something, I declared, thrusting a piece of paper in front of my husband's nose.
Huh?
You were out here, weren't you? The paper was a schedule for a trip.
Well, it's because we suddenly had a meeting for the new shop at the hotel.
But the reservation was made 3 months ago. right after I decided to attend my friend's wedding. As I checked the date, it aligned with the moment I committed to the wedding. Michael seemed to panic again, avoiding eye contact and falling silent. Moreover, you reserved a couple's plan at the hotel. Huh? I wasn't invited.
It was something I saw on TV, a popular option. I thought it might benefit our shop, so I went for research.
His feeble excuses only increased the suspicion. A faint sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. Well, so you took you employees along?
Yeah, like a company trip.
I inwardly sighed at Michael's ever-changing explanations. But now, it was showtime. I couldn't afford to drag out this exchange any longer. What part of this is a business trip, huh? I confronted him, presenting several photos. They showed my husband posing happily with another woman at tourist spots and getting cozy in bathrobes at the hotel. Clearly, it wasn't a work-related trip. They looked like a couple on vacation. Michael pulled out his phone, glancing between the photos I'd handed him and his screen, looking flustered.
How did you get these pictures?
He demanded, showing me his phone. To his surprise, the same images I'd printed were displayed there. I smirked at him. Did you forget that your phone's contents are accessible from a computer? Michael's face fell as he remembered. You see, he'd previously helped create greeting cards for a customer using his phone data, including addresses. He'd linked his phone and computer, allowing me to access reservation details and even the photos sent by his affair partner from the tourist spots. Moreover, isn't she one of your employees? No wonder you confidently called it a company trip. Michael's affair partner was indeed a 28-year-old woman named Sophia, who worked at his restaurant. To think I was being cheated on right under my nose. Honestly, it's quite shocking.
It's hard to see what is under your nose.
Michael tried to deflect with a joke, but there was no sign of remorse. I had no lingering feelings for a man like him. I can't forgive what you did to Mia more than your infidelity, I declared.
Well, if you've already found out, there's no helping it,
Michael retorted, wearing a defiant smile.
I wanted to be with Sophia, and I planned to divorce you. As for child support, well, that's another matter. Paying for Mia is a bit much.
He seemed reluctant to spend unnecessarily on child support. That's when he saw me agonizing over attending my friend's wedding. Michael had an idea. If he got rid of the daughter he was watching, all problems would vanish. So that day, he locked Mia in the freezer and set off confidently on his affair trip. His plan was to handle it before I returned home and find a clever excuse for her death.
Well, it's all ruined because of you.
I felt nothing but disgust as he grinned.
So where's Mia? When's the funeral?
What are you talking about?
I'm asking about her. What happened to her?
Michael's frustration was evident in his tone. Mia is fine. Right now, my mom is with her at the hospital.
What? Is she alive?
He looked visibly disappointed. I had discovered Mia shortly after Michael left the house. Her face was cold, and she wasn't crying. I had braced myself for the worst. But while waiting for the ambulance, Mia opened her eyes, yawned, and cried loudly. It seemed she had slept soundly even in that situation. The hospital conducted thorough tests, but there were no abnormalities. Considering her young age, just 6 months, they decided on a slightly longer hospital stay. The freezer had been slightly ajar, and I found her soon after Michael's departure. Mia's survival was a combination of luck, her age, the short time she was inside, and the fortunate circumstances. While I can say this now that she's safe, I'm still amazed by Mia's resilience. How she could sleep soundly anywhere, undisturbed. I'll report this incident to the police, I declared.
Huh? Why? She's safe now, so what's the problem?
Upon hearing the word police, his eyes widened, and he looked flustered. That's not the issue. What you did could have cost our child's life if things had gone wrong.
Damn it. Why didn't the plane fly? If you had attended the wedding, my plan would have been foolproof.
He defiantly paced around me, spitting as he spoke. It seemed he lacked any awareness of his wrongdoing. To make him acknowledge his guilt, I planned to involve the police and seek severe consequences. But first, I had another way to teach him a lesson. Regarding this matter, I'll have it written up in the magazine. The reputation of this shop will take a nosedive.
Wait a minute. That's unfair. It's an abuse of authority.
Michael stopped in his tracks and grabbed my shoulder. But I shook off his hand with all my strength. I'm just doing my job. You may have forgotten, but I used to work for a publishing company, responsible for the magazine section. Before we got married, I frequented my husband's restaurant, which was delicious but not yet popular. So, I wrote an article introducing it in the E-Reporter's Hidden Gem Restaurants section, and it quickly became a thriving establishment. Well, that's how I ended up being appreciated and eventually dating and marrying Michael. My husband knows the impact of being featured in a magazine, so he's quite anxious.
I've come this far, and I even have plans for a new branch. If there's a review like that, our sales will plummet, and I'll lose all credibility.
It's not something I know about.
But if that happens, our livelihood will suffer. You and Mia will be equally affected, won't you?
He desperately tried to persuade me, going back and forth. Wait, you were planning to divorce me because you wanted to be with your affair partner, right? Well, then it doesn't matter what happens to us. That's the situation, so the paperwork is already prepared. Sign it here quickly. I'll be claiming alimony and child support too. I fluttered the divorce papers in front of my husband. He snatched them from me and stared at them intently. Finally facing reality, Michael suddenly began apologizing.
I'm sorry, please forgive me. I want you to reconsider the divorce, and please keep this from the police.
Even as he tearfully pleaded, looking at my husband, I couldn't help but think, what a pitiful person. If an apology is enough, we don't need the police. Regret your actions and live with it. With a firm tone, I pushed him away, and Michael collapsed on the floor, wailing. Afterward, the divorce with my husband was finalized. I demanded a total of $20,000 in compensation for his affair from both him and his lover. Additionally, we agreed that he would pay a lump sum of $63,000 for our daughter's child support. Fearing unnecessary expenses, my husband triggered this incident, unaware of the immense consequences he would face. The police were notified, and Michael was questioned. Subsequently, he was arrested and sentenced to spend some time behind bars. Even without me writing an article, this incident made headlines in the news and was prominently featured in newspapers. Furthermore, social media, where I had shared information about the restaurant, flooded with critical comments regarding the fact that our daughter had been kept in the freezer. The restaurant's reputation plummeted rapidly, leading to its swift demise. My husband, now with no place to return to, faced the consequences of his actions. On the other hand, I started a new life with my daughter. Since Michael had never been involved in parenting, His absence had no impact. Mia is growing up happily, and I'm determined to keep striving for her smile.
How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time in our next video.